Mr. Mukami, welcome to Atlanta.
Thank you so much.
I understand that you are the head of the Martin Luther King Jr. Africa Foundation in Kenya. Could you tell us about the foundation?
Well, the Martin Luther King Jr. Africa Foundation began as a civil rights kind of a group that was addressing issues of young people in the context of nonviolence. We wanted to promote Dr. Kenyan philosophy of nonviolence in Kenya, especially when it comes to addressing issues of social justice, human rights, economic injustice that happened in Kenya before, and more so training young people in a leadership that is promulgated on the tenets of peace, on tenets of democracy, on the tenets of individual character, and on the tenets of United Nations Convention on the rights of individuals, especially when it comes to both social, economic, political, spiritual, and psychological needs.
How long has it been in existence?
The foundation has been in existence for the past 2 years in Kenya. We have actually been, before we used to commemorate Dr. Martin Luther King, but we used to commemorate him just as a group of young people who will come together once in a while to commemorate him. But now we're doing it more as a foundation, and so the foundation was incorporated in the year 2006, and it is going to celebrate, it was celebrating 2 years this year.
Were you there at the beginning? Were you one of the founders?
Yes, I'm actually the founder of Martin Luther King, and I was also the one who actually started the celebration of Martin Luther King Day in Nairobi, Kenya.
Can you tell me how old you are?
I'm 23 years old.
And how long have you been a activist?
Long ago. In 1999, I joined the Union of National Radio Television Organization of Africa. I joined their Program Exchange Center in Nairobi as a program director for NISISI. It was a children's program that actually was addressing issues of children. Through that program, I came to the limelight, and through that, I was appointed the spokesperson of the Children's Cabinet. Later on, I became the vice president of the Children's Cabinet and served as its first male president. I founded the National Youth Parliament in Kenya in 2005 and also became its president. I had the honor to serve as a president of the East Africa Children's Assembly that incorporated both Uganda and Tanzania and Kenya as a regional bloc addressing issues of kids. One of the things that I've been doing all my life since I was 14 years old, I've been trying to address issues of young people, especially in the context of their participation in democratic decision-making processes. You see, we come from a situation where young people are not really involved in decision-making processes. Most of the time, they're there to rubber stamp what another person has already brought as an ideology. And what I've done as a person, I've tried to train them, I've tried to bring them to a level where they can understand issues that affect them and how they can challenge and also respond to those issues. So I've been doing this all the way since I was 14, and I had an honor to serve as the only child delegate to the National Constitutional Conference that happened in our own country. And I was also the only youngest person to lead the national community-based organizations in Kenya, which has more than 17,000 community-based organizations under its authority. And I've also been able to serve as a program director of the African Session with Mr. Joe Beasley. I've been helping them with their programs in Africa, and also have worked with the United States, especially with the U.S. Embassy when it comes to public information and programs.
Could you tell us some of the main issues as a student and a youth leader you have dealt with?
Well, one of the issues that we have in Kenya as of now is issues of first role models. Kenya, 43 years later, we don't have role models that we can call beyond the political circles, that we can say these are the people that we want to emulate. And that's a big issue, I felt, because it's Kofi Annan who said that the earth does not belong to our parents. It belongs, we borrow it from our children. And so when young people do not have people in the older generation to look forward to, then they tend to grow up creating an identity. And therefore, when you try to create an identity that you're not aware of, because most of us are not taken through African history the way it is, we tend to be confused on the way. And that has been one of the greatest challenges. Young people not having an issue of self-identity. Second has been ignorance. As much as you're educated about America, as much as you're educated about Europe and all its issues, we are very ignorant of our own nation. We are quite ignorant about our people, their cultures, and how they help in making our nation the inseparable, the indivisible nation it is. And that has been a big setback in addressing issues of unity, issues of relating to stabilization of the nation, and issues relating to Kenya forming more as one unified, inseparable, and an indivisible nation. Another thing that has really affected is ethnicity, because Africa tends to get themselves back to the tribal cocoons when they are faced with issues that they are not aware of, like elections, for example, like economic development, like political emancipation. We tend to fight things rather than on the issues of character, not in the issues of education. We tend to fight things on the issue of tribe. Do they come from my ethnicity? Are they an extraction of where we come from? And so that's something that the foundation has been trying to fight in the 2 years of its existence. And more so the mere fact that we know as young people that we can take the leadership, but there is a fear that we are not capable of doing so. And that is more summed up into self-esteem, which we try to fight.
Were you in Kenya at the time of the December 27th election?
Yes, I was in Kenya. Actually, I was an observer in Kenya.
Could you explain a little bit the mood of the nation before the election, and then what happened from your perspective at the election?
Well, what I believe is that Kenya as a nation was actually quite prepared, really prepared for the election. Kenyans had great hopes and aspirations to the Electoral Commission. Mr. Samuel Kivitu is actually a personal friend in my life, and all of us trusted that the Electoral Commission had the guts, they had the systems, they had infrastructure to make elections free and fair. The mood of the nation that morning was that Kenya had great expectation that they will just vote and move on with their lives, which they've always done all their times. And so in the morning of 27, in the afternoon of 27, and later in the evenings of 27, there was democracy all over. The nation, the atmosphere was great. People were happy, they were voting. They turned out in large numbers to make a statement of who they wanted to vote for. The only problem that happened is that after the election, there were flaws on both sides. One is that the Orange Democratic Movement tried, most of their officials actually intimidated the integrity of the returning officers. They would scream at them, they would shout at them, they would say their candidates have won, and it started bringing a hatred and a fear that was not there before. Likewise, in PNU activities, some of them manifested arrogancy. They manifested like the government, they owned it, like the democracy was not of the people. They actually contradicted the statement of Lincoln, which he made many years ago, about a government of the people, by the people, and with the people. Because they made it look like, at the end of it all, what the Kenyan were doing, it was none of their business. And so by the time the elections were being announced, by the time the presidential candidate was being announced, we all knew that it was wrong, that there were irregularities, that the election was flawed, and actually that it was wrong to have the tallying announced before the issues that had been raised both by the opposition and the government side addressed. However, my personal feeling towards the election as a Kenyan and as a young person is that the violence that erupted after the election was not because of the election. They were because of the social, economic, political injustices that existed in that nation since independence.